Amen. So that last song, man, goes straight with what I wanted to talk about today. So I don't know how that happened, but that was pretty cool. If more of you means less of me, take everything. And the title of today's sermon is The Church Monday through Saturday. And honestly, I thought that I was going to come in and be like, hey, here's like a bunch of practical things and be really smart. And then I started studying and I'm like, crap, like I'm not that smart. And so I was like, maybe I should just like look at what Jesus did and relate it to that. And so I kind of redid everything from what I thought I was going to share. So it's great to be with you all. As you know, I grew up going to this church and I've been back for about 4, 5, 6 months now, and it's been awesome to be back. Today was a historic day, though. Um, so for almost my entire Cornerstone career, which we started coming here like in what 1997, we always have sat on this side, um, and the Anweilers started coming here in like what 2000 something, 2005, and they always sit on this side, and I've never sat with the Anweilers, and so today, for the very first time in 25 years, I was able to sit with the Anweiler side. So I felt extremely at home, and he's happy about it too. I wasn't over there, so. um, refrigerator rights. Shoot, oh man. Well, actually, I guess I haven't opened your refrigerator. Maybe feel free. Mine and Gabe's is pretty sparse. But we're getting better. Although I think I'm moving up to Valpo soon, so it's kind of sad. Um, so, uh, does anybody know what Jesus' last words were? It is finished. Shoot, I didn't think about that. That's not the ones that I was thinking of. No, wait. That was not Jesus' last words. Trick question. Whoever gets it, I'll give you a free chicken sandwich card. Oh, I saw Aunt Jenny. Nope. Oh, Nathaniel, the Great Commission. Yeah, Matthew 28. Remember, Jesus died and he did something, which was like rise again. And so when he died, that actually wasn't his last words. Trick question, right? Um, Nathaniel, remind me, I have one in my pocket. So now you guys know what you get when you participate. He said it. He said the Great Commission. Good for you for being a preacher and knowing what passage that is. Right. So the Great Commission, I'm going to read it to you. Matthew 28:18 to 20. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. And so as I was thinking through this, oftentimes we think like growing up in the church and stuff, like part of the Great Commission is like, hey, let's get people to come to church. Like, and I'm not like against that at all. I think it's a great thing. I think you should come to church. I think it's a good chance to learn a lot of different stuff and like have that community and be reminded, even this morning as we're singing those psalms, like being reminded of what Jesus has done, where you just can't get that unless you actually stop and take the time to like reflect on that. And so I'm not saying that like church is not important, but what I'm saying is there Jesus, when you look at his life, and like as I was challenged to look at his life, most of his time was actually not at the synagogue, which is aka church for the Jewish people back in the day, right? And that was on Saturday. Um, And so he spent most of his time like walking around. There's going to be a couple things that we look at, but he spoke to people on boats. He worked with people on mountains. He spoke to people at wells. He like made this party completely lit. He turned a bunch of water into wine at this party. That was his coming out party of like, hey, I'm here, right? And so there's a lot of things that he did like through the rest of his life. And so I want to look at how he interacted with people, specifically how he spent his time. There's three kind of like groups of folks that he spent his time with. And then we're going to kind of end by applying it to our lives, just different facets of our life. So we'll go ahead and get started. So the first thing, Nate, what do you think the first thing I'm going to say is? Okay. You just look like you had the answer. The first thing, I would be impressed if you would have gotten this, because it's this, as far as him spending time with people, this is not with people. When I was looking through, I was surprised. Jesus spent a lot of time alone. And so the first thing I'm like, yo, Jesus is like a killer extrovert. Like you think of that, like, oh, he's spending time with people. And if I'm in Jesus's shoes, I'm like, shoot, I only got 33 years to like get this word out and like change the world forever. I'm going to be talking to people all the time. If like I can't be spending like time like alone, like, because I need to be seeing as many people as I can, right? That's like the goal-oriented part of me, the 3 on the Enneagram, the trying to achieve, right? Yep, I saw a hand back there. So, but Jesus honestly spent a lot of time alone. So he spent 40 days in the wilderness without food. That's terrible. I tried to fast one day. And I was so hangry, not happy. I think there's other things I can fast from. I've realized that after. I'm like, well, maybe I should fast from something else. But maybe God's calling me to do a better job at fasting. But Jesus did it for 40 days. And that was to prepare his time for his ministry. And so he had 30 years of just, working, doing his normal thing, then goes and fasts for 40 days. And then he was always like trying to sneak away by himself. People are like, yo, where's Jesus? And like the disciples are like, well, I don't know. Like, where did he go? Or they'd go out on the boat, be like, hey, we're going to start heading over there. He's like, no, go without me. And then like, I might be wrong on this. I believe he walked on water at one point to like catch up to him because he needed that time alone. So Jesus spent a lot of time alone. The second thing, Jesus spent time with people that were close to him. So you think about, actually, this is a good question. Who were the people that Jesus was close with? Oh, disciples. You know what? I have to give that to Doug, though, because he said it first. So getting great participation from this side of the room. I'm also standing over here. I'll walk over here. Yeah, the disciples. So Jesus spent a lot of time with those 12 disciples, and he had some that he was really close with. Who were the disciples that he was especially close with? Doris, do you know? You don't know? Yes. That's excellent. Great job, man. That's awesome. Thank you, Randy. Peter, James, and John. Randy's been going to this church forever. I was talking about that with him earlier today. So lots of commitment there, Randy. So Peter, James, and John, he was especially close to them. And he spent a lot of time, I'm sure, like the first 30 years of his life was like with his family and working. And so he spent a lot of time with those people. And even when he got really busy, like he always went back with those people. And so that's just kind of like the case study of Jesus with that. And then the last part was I tried to figure out if there was a third group, and there was really just no good way to like put them all in a group because it was just like random people. He literally spent time with everyone. There's these people called the Romans, which were like oppressing the Jews at the time. He would talk to them, like if they came up to him. There was this guy, so the people that were close with him were just normal, ordinary Jews, like fishermen or tax collectors and all this stuff, like not necessarily the religious type per se, but and he spent time with them. But then there was also this guy named Nicodemus who came to him in the middle of the night and was like, hey, I have questions for you. And he spent time with them. Like he literally would spend time with everyone and everyone, Samaritans. And so like he didn't discriminate who he spent time with. And the funny part is in his group of 12, there was a lot of people that were very different from each other in that group of 12. The tax collectors, as opposed to like Simon the Zealot, who was like wanted to overthrow the government, right? And a lot of people. And one other thing that I wanted to mention that Jesus did is he spent a lot of times eating meals with people. I thought that was pretty cool. So anyways, so those are the people that Jesus spent his time with. And so I want to just talk about how some core characteristics of how Jesus interacted with those people on a daily basis. Number one, Jesus met people where they were at. He didn't necessarily like expect them to come to him. You think of like the woman at the well, a lot of situations where he's purposely like went to people. And so there's actually one specific story that kind of stood out to me. Has anyone seen The Chosen? Yeah. It's actually pretty good. I was like, this is going to be so Christianese, like so cheesy and stuff, like not good. But then it actually turned out to be really, really good. I was introduced to it. I want to play a clip from The Chosen real quick, Dave, if you can do that for a second.
We live in the same world, Matthew.
Next.
Besides, what else are you going to do with a mind like yours?
Matthew. Matthew, son of Alphaeus.
Yes.
Follow me.
Me?
Yes, you.
Whoa. What are you doing?
You want me to join you?
Keep moving, street preacher.
Do you have any idea what this guy's done? Do you even know him?
Yes.
Listen, I said to... What are you doing? Where do you think you're going?
Guys, let me go.
Have you lost your mind? You have money. Quintus protects you. No Jew lives as good as you. You're gonna throw it all away.
Yes.
I don't get it.
You didn't get it when I chose you either.
But this is different. I'm not a tax collector.
Get used to different.
I'm glad we passed by your booth today, Matthew.
Yes.
Shall we? We have a celebration to prepare for.
You will regret this, Matthew.
What's the tablet for?
I grabbed it without thinking. You can put it back.
No, keep it. You may yet find use for it.
Where are we going?
A dinner party.
I'm not welcome at dinner parties.
Well, that's not going to be a problem tonight. You're the host.
So that was obviously Matthew. Matthew, everyone's read Matthew before, right? I'm assuming you have. But it's a gospel in the Bible. He wrote a gospel. And so Matthew was a tax collector. And it's funny, earlier in that season, this guy, he literally had to get to his tax collecting booth, he had to hide in this cart. And so people wouldn't ridicule him because tax collectors were the worst. They literally were hated amongst everybody. And so, because they enforced the Roman rule. And so for Jesus to stop and see him was something special. You see, Jesus saw Matthew for not what he had done, right? But for who he was. And one of my favorite parts of that was when Matthew's coming out and walking next to him, and Jesus is like, "What's up, bro? Like, welcome. I'm glad I stopped and saw you." And Matthew's like, "Oh, I have this tablet." And Jesus is like, "No, keep it. Like it might be of use to you, right?" Because Jesus saw Matthew is probably the most detailed gospel, right? He was very good with numbers and like the genealogies and the specific details, right? Jesus saw that special in Matthew and saw what he could be, right? So Jesus didn't look and see somebody sitting on the side of the road and be like, "Dude, you're homeless," right? But he saw, "Man, you have so much potential." I think that's incredibly, incredibly special. Jesus embraced interruptions. So I didn't know this, but like most of the cool stuff Jesus did was because people walked up to him and were like, "Jesus, help me," and they're trying to get his attention. Matthew 9, I was reading through Matthew 9, and there's like 60 spots, not 60, but like 4 or 5 spots where where Jesus is just interrupted. I'll read a couple of them. In Matthew 9:18 through 22, while he was saying this, a synagogue leader came and knelt before him and said, "My daughter has just died, but come and put your hand on her and she will live." Jesus got up and went with him, and so did his disciples. Then a woman who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak. She said to herself, "If I only touch him, or his cloak, I will be healed." Jesus turned and saw her and said, "Daughter, your faith has healed you." And the woman was healed at that moment. 2 times right there. First, he's like doing his thing in the synagogue. Somebody's like, "Hey, my daughter died. Come and do that." And then right after, this woman on his way, another person interrupts him. And then you get to Matthew 9:27. As Jesus went out there were 2 blind men following him, calling out, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." When he had gone indoors, the blind men came to him and asked, "Do you believe that I am able to do this?" They said, "Yes, Lord." He touched their eyes and said, "According to your faith, let it be done to you." And then skipping down, while they were going out, so just a little bit later, a man who was demon possessed and could not talk was brought to Jesus. And when the demon was driven out, the man who had been mute spoke. The crowd was amazed and said, "Nothing like this has ever been done in Israel." So Jesus all the time, like, was embracing those interruptions. Like picture if you're super busy at work and you have a lot of stuff to do, and all of a sudden people just keep coming up to you and interrupting you. I can actually picture this well when I'm at Chick-fil-A. It works really well. I do not handle it like Jesus though, a lot of the time. And so I love that he embraced those interruptions. And then lastly, Jesus was a good listener. One thing that just God spoke to me was that he was a really good listener. A lot of the times he answered questions with questions, right? And made people think. I think that's one thing that God's given us each a special gifting, the ability to like think through things. And a lot of times we just as Americans, like we talked about in my last sermon, it's a lot about like we want that Coke machine, right? We just want everything. Like I love the Coke machine because you can get Sprite Mellow Yellow in it, right? Or not Sprite, strawberry Mellow Yellow, because I like those fruity flavors. Um, and and like we want the specific things like right now. We want our faith to be handed to us. And sometimes like I don't have the faith. I feel like, man, I just need to like tell this person what's up, and like tell them what the right thing is, when in reality, like maybe that's not our role. Maybe we need to be like Jesus and ask some questions. And then when the time is right and you build that relationship, right, be able to speak into their lives. Jesus had an incredibly high EQ, which is emotional intelligence, just in the way that he was able to first connect with people and at the same time uh, give them give them that constructive criticism, or sometimes being nice isn't always being kind, right? And so the kind thing to do is sometimes to be like, hey man, like you're struggling, but the way that he was able to do that with so much tact really, really, really stuck out to me. So next up, we're going to apply this to ourselves, apply specifically how Jesus embraced the interruptions, how Jesus was a good listener, and how Jesus met people where they were at. And so how does this look like for us? So and I want you guys to think through it like this. So Jesus said in Matthew 5:13, like, you are the salt of the earth, right? And like, what's salt like? Like, you guys know what salt tastes like, right? It gives it flavor. Does anybody love putting salt on all their food? Right here. Okay. Yep. I like salt too because it makes it taste so freaking good. And I'm all about the taste, you know. That's why I work at Chick-fil-A. That's a plug. So no, but being salt, like if you've ever been around somebody that when they walk in, you can just feel like the Holy Spirit on them, like you feel like this presence, and like watching The Chosen, you feel like, man, Jesus just has this like aura around him, and that's not even real, or like it is real, but it's not like actually how he was, right? 100%. But we want to be like that. So people ask, like, what's the hope that you have? Like, what's different about you? Because if we're followers of Jesus, if we're being the church Monday through Saturday, you know, we need to be different. We need to be like the things that God has called us to be. And so as we're talking through these things, think, what's your flavor, you know, in these areas of your life? So first, I want to start with application for us is let's spend I think I need to spend some more time alone in prayer. This last year, I did a 50-day challenge in October. I was in the process of getting selected to own the Valpo Chick-fil-A, and one of my mentors was like, hey, let's do a 50-day challenge with me and you and a couple other guys. We did it. And so I committed to running every day for 50 days, which probably isn't like the most healthy thing to do. You probably need rest, but I did it. So I committed to doing that, and then I committed to prayer every day. And because I'm like, man, I'm terrible at prayer. Like I was like, I don't pray that much. Like I don't know how to that well. And so I decided, and there's were important things going on in my life that I wanted prayer for. Specifically, I wanted to be ready for when I left the program. I traveled for 2 years across the country, opening new Chick-fil-A's and stuff like that. And so I was like, when I get back, wherever I am, I want to have that community. And then I was praying for God's direction with Chick-fil-A. And then I was praying, I just felt called to pray for my future spouse, which sounds cheesy, kind of is. And so I prayed I was praying for those things. And I did that for 50 days. And then when I got back, well, actually during the 50 days, I was selected to be a Chick-fil-A owner-operator, which is awesome. And then when I got back, like, I've been so freaking busy. Like, Gabe can attest this. Like, I am not home a lot because I'm too busy, probably. But like, the Lord has really provided with that. And I started dating this. Chris introduced me to this girl, and hopefully she won't listen to this. She's like, oh, future spouse. Oh my gosh. Like, she'll be like, oh my gosh, what am I signing up for? No. But you know, like, God's led in that direction too. So but that just challenged me. Like, that's a Ebenezer in my life, of like a time where just like God has used prayer in such a powerful way. I think what I got from looking at Jesus's life is before important times in his life, he spent intentional time praying. And a lot of it was like in bigger chunks too. I think, like, I literally set my timer every day for 5 minutes and made myself pray for 5 minutes to check it off the list, right? Which might not be the best thing to do, but it helped build a habit. But I feel like God's also calling us to like take intentional time with prayer. When I was a RA at Taylor University, I had just spent a week probably working 80 hours that week, running around, serving pork burgers and homemade ice cream the week before at Lake County Fair. And literally the night before, we put away the trailer, and then I was driving down to Taylor the next day, and I got there, and he puts me in his car and drops me off in the middle of this forest and says, I'll see you in 24 hours. And I thought I about died. I was like, I was going through everything in my life, like, but he was really, really into that meditation, into like spending time in bulk in prayer. And I think that's something that I learned from him, is like every quarter, like reflecting on what's God called us to do, what's God called me to do. And that's been a really beneficial thing that I've done, and that I want to do more of, is taking that time to be with Jesus. And if Jesus needed to be with the Father, what about us? Like I desperately need to be with the Father. And so part of being that salt of the earth is being alone. Yeah, the second thing was Jesus embraced the interruptions. I was just in Chicago this last week visiting some friends, and there's all these people on the street, and they're like talking to me and trying to get my money, right? And I just like walked past them. And then I came back and read all this stuff about like these beggars and stuff on the street, and Jesus, interacted with them, and I was kind of convicted of that. And I don't know if it always means giving them money. Like, I think that's really up to you, and up to how what God's called you to do. But I think at least looking at them in the eye, and like in the interruptions of our days, like even the simple things, like for me, like going to the grocery store, just being willing to like take that time, being the salt of the earth, and living out the Great Commission could just be like, instead of just like head down and like I'm trying to get onto my next task, it's like taking time to say, hey, how are you doing, right? Or when you're really busy at work and somebody comes in and is like, they're like, hey Chris, like a stupid question, like taking the time to do that, and answer that, and maybe even ask them how they're doing. Yeah, so embracing those interruptions is such a big thing. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is radical hospitality. So I think Jesus, oftentimes we think of like radical hospitality of like, hey, we have to have people into our house. But I think radical hospitality also means like how we interact with people and who we interact with. I think in our society so much, especially now, and it's like a good thing. It's a survival mechanism. It's like we want to be around people that are like us, right? And so we can kind of protect our own, protect each other. But Jesus, I think he saw the power of embracing everybody's strengths. Everybody has different strengths. And, they might not always believe the exact same thing on every single issue, but there's core issues that, like, we all need to believe, but then also being willing to, like, embrace the differences and have conversations with folks that, even though, like, they don't necessarily believe 100% what we believe, either politically, whatever that looks like, being willing to sit down and have a conversation where you don't even, you're having the conversation. You don't even have to try to convince them that your way is the right way, right? So many times I sit down and I'm like, somebody says something and I'm like, oh my goodness, while they're talking, I'm like, how am I going to convince them that this is not right? Instead of just listening to them and being comfortable in the fact that all truth is God's truth, right? And so it's okay to search and to question, right? And that's part of growing, and that's okay. And I think Jesus put some people around him with very, very different views. These tax collectors, and then Simon, these fishermen, all these people that were so different were in his inner circle. And so I think radical hospitality means being willing to communicate with people and have people in our lives that have different interests, different views than what we do. I think that's what Jesus did. And then obviously, I think Jesus ate a lot of meals with people. I love what Jay said about that refrigerator rights. Like, not very many people have refrigerator rights to our house. I mean, we're never there, but just thinking through, like, who do we want to be? I think being different, being the salt of the earth, is like having people over for dinner, right? And just being willing to have those conversations, or go out for dinner, go to Chick-fil-A for dinner, like literally whatever it takes. Preferably Chick-fil-A if you live here. So, whatever it takes, like having that hospitality. So those were the big things. So embrace the interruptions and make sure that we're spending time alone in the Word, and then the radical hospitality. I also wanted to just touch briefly on work, on being the salt and light at work, right? I work too much probably, and I love it, but it's also, I think these things are applicable in the workplace. Does anyone know how much time you spend at work over the course of your lifetime? If you had to guess, it's in years. Too much. Does anyone want to throw out a number? 30. Close, but not really close. It's actually 13 years and 2 months time at work. So that's a lot of time. And so I think during that time, like, there's something to be said. Like, there's people at work that you just know that there's something different about them. You spend that much time at work, like, that's a big part about being the salt and light. That's a big part of your Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday. And Jesus has called us. He says, whatever you do it with all your heart, and that includes work. And I just felt like we're in the series getting back to the basics. I just want to make sure that, like, a big part of working hard and stuff is just being genuine. And I just wanted to share doing the basics right. And so it's like doing what you say you are going to do. The integrity piece is such a big thing that Christians need to have. And, like, if you're a kid, like, working at Chick-fil-A or working at Berkey's, like, showing up on time is such a big thing, because you can be like a Christian, be like that person that like is always talking about Jesus. But if you're always showing up late and the person that you're coming to take their shift is having to stay 5 minutes late every single day, that shows a lack of respect for them and for you, and a lack of respect for who you are as a believer. And so I think just getting back to the basics of doing those things like integrity, showing up on time, positive attitude. Because if we don't do those things, people in today's day and age, they just look for genuineness. Like literally, if you don't live it out, they don't care. And I'm not saying, I think people today probably too much are like, yeah, don't share the gospel, like it's not good. Like I'm not saying don't share the gospel, but yeah, I would say it's just so important for it to be effective, for us to represent ourselves well, to be genuine and make sure that we're doing that. And then as leaders, I think just having the leadership philosophy, there's a great leadership philosophy in the Bible. John 13 through 70, Jesus says, you call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. So being a leader at work, it's very countercultural to do that. Leadership is about helping the people that you're leading be successful and helping them essentially be the people that God's called them to be. Right? And so a lot of leaders are like, hey, it's about me. It's about doing all the positions. I had a leader who was like the best bagger at Chick-fil-A. Like she put all the stuff in the bags. And like when we were doing like not a lot in sales, like she was excellent. And then we got to a point where we were doubled our sales. And it was like tough because at some point, like you can't do it all. And she ended up just realizing that it wasn't the business had outgrown her and she left. But I say that is because it doesn't matter, like necessarily being a leader isn't about what you do. It's about how you empower others. And when she left, there was 5 leaders that stepped up and were like, hey, you know what? Like, I have a chance to shine. Because whenever she would walk in, she'd try to do 3 positions and be like, hey, like stand out of the way. And they didn't have a chance to grow and develop and be their best selves. And so as like Christians, that applies to us too. Are we leaders that are like, we should want so bad for people to be the best versions of themselves? Because that's who God's created them to be. That's like showing them Christ's light. That's salt of the earth. So I'm gonna close out. I want to end by reading a poem. It's called "I'll Stand by the Door" by Sam Schumacher, and it talks about being a doorkeeper into people's lives. And essentially, long story short, I view it as like being the salt of the earth and going into all the nations in our everyday lives and being that person that embraces those interruptions, that has those tough conversations with people, that puts people around them that aren't really, maybe at first it's not comfortable, you know? I just pray that as I read this poem, that God would just speak to you. Maybe he's calling you to embrace interruptions. Maybe he's calling you to stretch yourself in the area of hospitality or be a better example of what a follower of Christ looks like in the workplace, right? Or maybe even being alone. Like maybe God's calling you to spend more time alone and spend that time in solitude. So as I read, just reflect on that. And so I'll read this real quick and then we'll wrap up from there. So it's called "I Stand by the Door." I stand by the door. I neither go too far in nor stay too far out. The door is the most important door in the world. It is the door through which men walk when they find God. There is no use my going way inside and staying there when so many are still outside and they, as much as I, crave to know where the door is. And all that so many ever find is only a wall where the door might be. They creep along the wall like blind men, with outstretched, groping hands, feeling for a door, knowing there must be a door, yet they never find it. So I stand by the door. The most tremendous thing in the world is for men to find that door, the door to God. The most important thing that any man can do is to take hold of one of those blind, groping hands and put it on the latch that only clicks and opens to a man's own touch. Men die outside the door as starving beggars die. On cold nights in cruel cities in the dead of winter, they die for want of what is within their grasp. They live on the other side of it, live because they have not found it. Nothing else matters compared to helping them find it and open it and walk in and find him. So I stand by the door. Go in, great saints, go all the way in. Go all the way down into the cavernous cellars and way up into the spacious attics. It is a vast, roomy house, and this house is where God is. Go into the deepest of the hidden casements of withdrawal of silence of sainthood. Some must inhabit those inner rooms and know the depths and heights of God and call outside to the rest of us how wonderful it is. Sometimes I take a deeper look in, sometimes venture in a little further, but my place seems to be closer to the opening, so I stand by the door. There is another reason why I stand there. Some people get partway in and become afraid, lest God and the zeal of his house devour them. For God is so very great and asks all of us. And these people feel a cosmic claustrophobia and want to get out. Let me out, they cry. And the people way inside only terrify them more. Somebody must be by the door to tell them that they are spoiled. For the old life they have seen too much. One taste of God and nothing but God will do anymore. Somebody must be watching for the frightened who seek to sneak out just where they came in to tell them how much better it is inside. The people too far in do not see how near these are to leaving, preoccupied with the wonder of it all. Somebody must watch for those who have entered the door, but would like to run away. So for them too, I stand by the door. I admire the people that go all the way in, but I wish they would not forget how it was before they got in. Then they would be able to help the people who have not yet even found the door, or the people who want to run away again from God. You can go in too deeply and stay too long and forget the people outside the door. But as for me, I shall take my old accustomed place, never near enough to God to hear him and know that he is there, but far from men as to not to hear them, but not so far from men as to not to hear them. And remember that they are there too. Where? Outside the door. Thousands of them, millions of them, but more importantly, one of them, 2 of them, 10 of them, whose hands I am intended to put on the latch. So I stand by the door and wait for those who seek it. I'd rather be a doorkeeper, so I stand by the door. So yeah, that's like one of my life poems. I only have one life poem, but I don't read poems. But my prayer is, my prayer for us is just that we would be those doorkeepers, and that we would live out the Great Commission Monday through Saturday, in our everyday lives, embrace the interruptions, be that salt and light that everybody can see in our daily lives. And so I'll turn it back over to Jay.
Well, thanks, David. That's good. I was reminded of one of my favorite verses. I don't have a favorite verse. This is one of them, David. Just so you know, this is one of them. But it really is. It's out of 1 John chapter 2 that says, "He who says he abides in him ought himself also to walk just as he walked." What a challenge. If we say we're abiding in him, that we need to be walking like he walked. And what you said, David, there is walking like he walked. And I appreciate that. I'm going to say goodbye to the online people right now, but I'm just